At 4:30 in the morning, Bagram Airfield sat beneath a clear Afghan sky. Floodlights cut pale circles into the concrete. Beyond the runway, the mountains had disappeared into darkness. Stars covered everything above them. A pilot looked up. Part of the sky went black. No flash crossed his view. No row of lights gave the object an edge. Stars simply vanished behind a dark shape moving from west to east. As more stars disappeared, the pilot read the outline as an equilateral triangle. He heard no engine. He saw no windows, exhaust, or metal skin. The shape kept moving at a steady pace. He put its width near 500 feet. He placed its speed near 150 knots. Then another pilot spoke. The released account records a brief reaction from the second aviator. He had seen something too. The dark patch crossed the star field. The stars returned behind the shape. Nothing chased the object. No alarm appears in the public record. The moment ended before anyone gathered a measurement. For more than 20 years, the story stayed out of public view.
This is Tom Mackenzie, and you are listening to Unexplained History. Tonight, we are tracking black triangles from a wartime airfield to New York, Belgium, Arizona, and Illinois. Put me down as interested, not convinced. One pilot's memory gives us a strong opening. A 500-foot flying machine needs stronger evidence.
The Bagram account reached the public through an FBI Form 302. Agents used the form to summarize an interview. The interview took place in 2024, more than 2 decades after the reported sighting. An artist later drew a triangle from the pilot's description. The Pentagon released both records in August 2026 as part of a batch containing 41 files. So we have a real government document. We also have one old memory, written down by someone else. Those facts pull in opposite directions. The government heading makes the story feel official. The form never claims the FBI verified a giant aircraft. The file proves an interview occurred. The picture records an artist's reading of the witness account. Neither item measures whatever crossed the sky.
A government file is not a government endorsement. Police record burglaries before finding a burglar. Intelligence officers record claims before confirming them. Here, the FBI documented what a pilot remembered. The agency did not certify the object's size, speed, or origin.
An interview summary also leaves much of the exchange outside the record. Readers never hear each question, pause, correction, or change in wording. We do not know how the agent tested the pilot's distance estimate. We do not know whether the two discussed traffic, cloud, nearby buildings, or the visible width of the object against known stars. The delay matters more. In 2002, investigators might have checked duty logs, radar data, weather reports, air traffic tapes, or flight schedules. By 2024, routine records from a wartime base had long since disappeared, moved into storage, or fallen behind classification rules. A careful interview might preserve a memory. The interview never rebuilt the night. My problem with the case starts with distance. A dark object close to the pilot and a larger object far away cover the same amount of sky. Without range, width becomes an estimate. Speed depends on range too. Place the object farther away, and the same motion across the stars means a much higher speed. The silence also sounds stronger than the record supports. Wind, terrain, machinery, and the direction of travel change what reaches a listener. A distant aircraft appears quiet, long before its engine becomes silent. At Bagram, we lack the location of the pilot, the direction he faced, the local noise level, and the path of nearby flights. The second pilot offers the best chance for corroboration. Yet the public release contains no separate account from him. We hear his reaction through the first pilot's memory. One independent statement, recorded near the event, would change the case. The file gives us none. Bagram was busy in 2002. Coalition jets, transports, helicopters, surveillance aircraft, balloons, and classified missions used the wider airspace. Crews worked under strict light control. Mountains blocked parts of the horizon. Aircraft approached along routes selected for security. A familiar vehicle seen from an unfamiliar angle might look strange. A classified vehicle would leave records hidden from the public, though crews, fuel, maintenance, and flight control still existed behind the secrecy. None of those possibilities identifies the dark shape. They show why unidentified should remain a description, not a conclusion.
Respect the pilot. Check the measurement. Those two actions belong together. Calling the witness honest does not make 500 feet a measured width. Calling the estimate weak does not make the sighting fake.
The Bagram story arrived after decades of triangle reports. By 2026, readers already knew the image. A black wedge. 3 corners. Slow movement. Little sound. Military secrecy somewhere in the background. Such repetition feels like confirmation. Similar reports across time and place seem to point toward one hidden machine. Yet repeated shapes also grow from repeated viewing conditions. Put separate lights against a blank sky, and the mind joins them. Remove distance cues, and a small formation becomes enormous. Let darkness erase the surfaces, and the empty space between lights starts to look solid. The triangle carries another advantage as a story. A saucer looks alien. A triangle looks engineered. The shape resembles an arrowhead, a delta wing, a stealth bomber, or several aircraft holding formation. Before a witness names an origin, the outline already feels military. The Bagram pilot described no corner lights. He saw missing stars. Other witnesses saw bright points and supplied a dark body between them. Different observations produced the same final shape. The question is not whether every witness lied. The harder question asks, how many different events ended under one familiar label? To follow the label, we need to go back to the year when newspapers first taught the public what an unknown object should look like. On a dry lake bed in Nevada, a black jet left a guarded hangar after sunset. Ground crews worked beneath restricted lights. The aircraft had no smooth fuselage, no ordinary tail, and no public name. Its flat panels met at severe angles. From below, the outline looked like a dark arrowhead. The first flight took place in 1981. For 7 years, the United States denied the public a clear look at the program. Pilots flew at night from the Tonopah test range. Maintenance crews hid the airframes before daylight. The Air Force acknowledged the F-117 Nighthawk in November 1988. A secret black aircraft had been flying inside the United States all along. The reveal changed every later triangle story. Suspicion now had a documented example. A witness who saw an unknown wedge no longer needed an alien explanation. A hidden military project felt sensible because one had recently emerged from secrecy. The shape had a longer history. Northrop built large flying wing prototypes during the Second World War. Germany's Horten brothers tested swept wings. Delta designs later appeared on Cold War jets. Those aircraft flew through normal aerodynamics. Their outlines still looked unfamiliar beside a bomber with a tube-shaped body and a tail. Northrop kept pursuing the flying wing after the war. Aviation magazines printed photographs of broad wings with no usual fuselage. Pulp magazines and comic books pushed the shape further. Film gave the wedges speed and scale. Television brought them into living rooms. Hardware and fiction fed the same public picture. Earlier UFO culture favored a different outline. In June 1947, private pilot Kenneth Arnold reported 9 bright objects moving near Mount Rainier. His drawings showed rounded fronts and tapered backs, closer to heels, crescents, or flying wings than dinner plates. Arnold compared their motion to saucers skipping across water. News coverage shortened the description. The Associated Press spread "flying saucer" across the country. Reports of discs followed. The press supplied a name, and the name supplied an image. By the 1980s, stealth research had given the public a new one. The saucer began yielding to the triangle. Government investigations helped keep the subject in public view. Project Sign began after the first wave of reports. Project Grudge followed. Project Blue Book later collected 12,618 sightings between 1947 and 1969. The Air Force listed 701 as unidentified when the program closed. Unidentified meant investigators lacked enough evidence for a firm answer. Blue Book reported no proof of extraterrestrial vehicles or technology beyond known science. Project Blue Book closed as another secret aircraft program moved toward flight testing. The timing later invited suspicion, though no record links the two. Unknown sightings and hidden aviation programs existed side by side. The difficult work lies in proving where they overlap.
The F-117 gives secret aircraft claims a receipt. Good. Now check the rest of the bill. The jet had loud engines, strict operating ranges, pilots, crashes, contractors, and a base. None of those facts turns every silent triangle into its successor.
The B-2 Spirit made the connection stronger. The bomber rolled into public view at Palmdale, California, in November 1988. The first flight followed the next July. The broad flying wing measured 172 feet across. Seen from below at night, the dark bomber looked nothing like a normal jet. Known stealth planes do not match the best-known reports. The F-117 and B-2 have loud engines. Neither plane drifts at walking speed. Both obey normal limits for lift, speed, and turning. Their bases, crews, maintenance, and flight operations leave records. A fast angular object near a test range points toward an aircraft. A football field-sized triangle hovering above a road points toward a bad size estimate, a different source, or missing evidence. Books and websites mix the secrecy of Tonopah with the shape of the B-2 and the performance of fictional spaceships. Aurora became the rumored successor to the SR-71. TR-3B became a triangle with exotic propulsion. Online diagrams supplied engines and technical specifications. The details passed from one site to another, often without a procurement record, test history, airframe, or named source. Classified programs still exist. Detailed online claims still need traceable evidence. Night also builds triangles from simple lights. 3 points mark a flat surface. More lights along 2 sides form a V. Small planes in formation leave black space between them. Flares look motionless from far away. Without stars or a visible horizon, your eyes lose the reference points needed for distance. By the early 1980s, people knew the flying saucer story. They had also learned about stealth research and new aircraft shapes. A few lights supplied the rest. Reports soon flooded New York's Hudson Valley. On clear nights in the lower Hudson Valley, drivers began pulling onto the shoulder. People got out beside dark roads and looked above the tree line. White, red, and green lights moved in a broad arc. The display seemed too wide for a plane and too organized for stars. Some witnesses saw a boomerang. Others chose V, crescent, or arrowhead. Many described one black body behind the lights. Size estimates ranged from a house to something wider than a football field. Reports mentioned slow movement, hovering, and little sound. The best-known wave ran from 1983 into 1984 across Westchester, Putnam, and Dutchess counties. Calls also came from Connecticut. The region held wooded ridges, reservoirs, highways, and small airports. New York City lit the southern horizon. One evening brought more calls. The pattern passed above the valley, changed shape, then disappeared. Another night produced a similar display. Newspaper coverage drew larger crowds outdoors. Residents learned the usual hours and roads. The mystery began keeping its own schedule. Police followed the lights. Investigators followed the police. Both trails led toward a small airport at Stormville. Pilots near Stormville Airport flew small airplanes in tight formations after dark. Contemporary reports described Cessna 152s and other light planes arranged as Vs, crescents, circles, crosses, and diamonds. Dark undersides vanished against the night. Navigation lights stayed visible. Engine noise faded across several miles. A coordinated turn made the full pattern bank as one object. When the pilots switched off their lights, the supposed UFO disappeared. The formations also changed shape as they turned. A wide V viewed from the side compresses into a line. A bank brings one light above another. Aircraft nearer the viewer move faster across the field of view than planes farther away. Witnesses then describe a solid object bending, rotating, or changing form. The pilots did not need unusual technology. Perspective handled the effect. Engine sound offered a poor check on distance. A Cessna is easy to hear nearby. Several miles away, wind direction and background traffic cut the sound. Light reaches the observer almost at once. Sound arrives later. Someone looking down to call a family member might miss the engine noise by the time the formation passes. New York State Police said an officer followed the lights towards Stormville and found a group of airplanes. Some pilots reportedly enjoyed the reaction. The Federal Aviation Administration later inspected planes at the airport after complaints about lights and low flying. The night formation slowed after official attention arrived. UFO reports also dropped. The plane explanation has names, a location, and a working method. The evidence fits a large share of the wave. 5 small planes spread across a distant formation take up plenty of sky. Treat the lights as parts of one nearby object, and the supposed body becomes huge. Treat them as separate planes farther away, and the size looks ordinary. Your eyes see the same angles either way. Distance changes the answer.
Stormville gives this mystery a runway. Known pilots flew known planes in the reported shapes. An officer followed the display and found aircraft. Reports slowed after federal inspectors arrived. I will leave a few poorly documented calls open, but most of the wave already has an answer. People dislike this explanation because small planes sound too small. Scale was the trick. Spread several aircraft across miles of dark sky, then read their lights as the corners of one nearby body. The supposed vehicle grows without anything in the formation growing at all.
News coverage told residents where and when to watch. Photos of curved light formations showed them what to expect. Investigators arrived with set categories. Books joined separate nights into one long event. Television reenactments later added a solid black object nobody had photographed clearly. Memory changes during recall. Someone sees lights on Tuesday, watches the news on Wednesday, compares stories on Thursday, and speaks with an investigator on Friday. Each step adds information from outside the original sighting. By the weekend, a sincere witness holds a cleaner and larger story. Nobody needs to lie. Reports of silence need the same care. A driver might miss engine noise under wind, traffic, or conversation. Sound from a distant aircraft also arrives late and weak. Once a witness places the lights low above the road, the missing roar seems to rule out airplanes. The first distance estimate shapes every judgment after. The most dramatic stories have weak records. Security staff at the Indian Point nuclear plant reportedly saw a huge object near the facility. Public documents offer little support, and the power authority disputed the most alarming details. Photos from the wider wave show lights. Few show the solid body described later. Indian Point became a major part of later books because a nuclear plant raises the stakes. Claims included armed guards, emergency calls, and an object hovering near the reactor. Public statements from the power authority challenged those details. Without the original security logs, investigators rely on stories filtered through UFO researchers. A dramatic setting increased attention without improving the evidence. My read is simple. Stormville pilots and public attention drove most of the Hudson Valley wave. A smaller group of reports stays open because the evidence is poor, not because those cases prove an unknown vehicle. The Hudson Valley also fixed the triangle's public image. The object floated above suburban homes. Colored lights marked the edges. Witnesses called the body huge, slow, silent, and solid. Later reports repeated the same features. 5 years later, Belgian police described a triangle above a highway. Radar operators saw unusual returns. Fighter jets went up. The Belgian Air Force spoke about the case in public. On November 29, 1989, 2 gendarmes patrolled near Eupen in eastern Belgium. They saw lights above the countryside and reported a large, dark triangle moving slowly at low altitude. Bright lights marked the underside. A red light pulsed or moved near the center. The object seemed to hover before leaving at speed. More calls followed. Separate groups described similar lights and shapes. The region sat near international borders and busy air routes, yet witnesses did not recognize a normal aircraft. Reports spread across Belgium over the next few months. Police officers, civilians, and military personnel joined the growing wave. Belgian authorities responded in public. The Air Force worked with civilian investigators and discussed radar information. During the night of March 30th, 1990, ground observers reported more lights. Radar stations registered returns. 2 F-16 fighters launched to investigate. The pilots picked up radar contacts, but never saw a clear object. Some returns appeared to change speed and altitude at extreme rates. Other returns lasted only seconds or failed to match across systems. The scramble lasted more than an hour. Pilots tried several intercepts and recorded brief locks. The most dramatic readouts seemed to show sudden acceleration and steep altitude changes. Those figures later became some of the strongest claims in the Belgian story. Yet the crews never saw an object matching the radar performance. Ground observers also lost sight of their lights during parts of the intercept.
This is the point where Belgium earns attention. Police watched the sky. Ground radar showed returns. Fighters launched. Airborne radar produced locks. Each extra layer sounds like confirmation. The trouble starts when we line up the clocks and positions.
A later technical report reconstructed the radar contacts in detail. Several contacts turned out to involve the fighters themselves, including the wingman used during control checks. Radar geometry and identification signals made the reconstruction difficult. Other returns stayed disputed. The review weakened claims of one vehicle racing through impossible maneuvers, even though the original sightings still lacked one complete explanation. A fighter scramble proves the Air Force took the reports seriously. The launch does not identify the target. Radar readings depend on geometry, weather, calibration, filtering, and software. A return might come from an aircraft, atmospheric interference, another fighter, or noise. During this mission, no pilot pulled beside a giant triangle and looked at one. Belgium still offers more evidence than most UFO waves. Police gave statements. Civilians called in reports. Ground and airborne radar produced records. The Air Force responded. Those records never joined around one confirmed object. No clear daylight photo or physical trace established a machine with the reported performance.
Belgium has more paperwork than most triangle cases and less agreement than the legend suggests. A witness, a radar operator, and a fighter pilot all reacted during the same mission. The records never prove all three tracked one object. The Air Force discussed the case in public, which gave investigators rare access to the confusion. More evidence did not form one clean picture. More evidence exposed several incomplete pictures.
The Petit-Rochain photograph soon became the face of the Belgian wave. The image showed a dark triangle with bright corner lights and a reddish point near the center. Newspapers printed the photo around the world. Analysts enhanced the image. Documentaries treated the picture as major evidence. In 2011, the photographer admitted to a hoax. He cut the triangle from polystyrene, painted the model, added small lights, suspended the piece, and took the photo. A cheap model against a black background fooled viewers for 2 decades. The method worked because the image had no scale. A small model close to the lens and a large vehicle far away produced the same outline against blackness. Long exposure softened the lights and added a sense of motion. The photograph looked detailed, but none of the detail established distance or size. The confession left the police reports and military response untouched. The hoax still damaged the case. Most people knew the photograph better than any gendarme statement. Skeptics used the confession to dismiss the full wave. Believers pushed the image aside. Neither response fixed the missing links between witnesses and radar. Several ordinary sources fit parts of the wave. Helicopters move slowly, hover, and carry several lights. Stars and planets appear to move against a dark, empty sky. Temperature inversions interfere with radar. Aircraft formations create geometric patterns. Heavy news coverage also increases reports. No one explanation covers every call. The evidence also fails to establish one exotic vehicle behind them all. The timing fed the secret aircraft theory. The Air Force revealed the F-117 only a year before the Belgian wave. The B-2 appeared in public during November 1988 and flew the next July. Black radar-evading aircraft had moved from rumor to news. Witnesses and reporters suspected another American program. Officials denied any American stealth flights over Belgium. The known F-117 and B-2 also failed to match the reported hovering. The theory survived because a secret military plane felt plausible and kept the witnesses credible. Magazines and television repeated the Belgian triangle with 3 corner lights and a red glow in the center. Model kits and computer graphics added clean edges missing from the witness reports. Future witnesses now had a clear picture in mind. When lights crossed Arizona in 1997, people already knew the Black Triangle story. Phoenix then joined two separate events under one famous name. On March 13, 1997, a line of lights moved south across Arizona. Reports began near the northern part of the state, reached Phoenix, then continued toward Tucson. Witnesses described 5, 6, or 7 lights. Some saw separate points. Others saw one huge dark object passing in front of the stars. Few heard the engine noise expected from a large plane. About an hour and a half later, bright amber lights appeared southwest of Phoenix. They formed a broken line above the horizon and seemed to hang in place. The lights disappeared one after another. Television crews recorded this second event. Their videos became the familiar Phoenix Lights footage. The first event moved. Reports followed the formation from northern Arizona toward Phoenix and then south. The later event stayed near the same part of the southwestern horizon. Combining them creates one object crossing the state, stopping above the mountains and then fading. The original timeline never shows such a sequence. One name soon covered both events. The later lights have a solid explanation. Maryland Air National Guard aircraft trained over the Barry Goldwater Range and dropped illumination flares. Parachutes slowed the burning flares as they descended behind the Sierra Estrella. The ridge was hard to see from the city after dark. Each light seemed to hover, then vanished behind the mountain. News crews later filmed similar flare drops and reproduced the sight. The flares were dropped around 10 in the evening from about 15,000 feet. At such a distance, their downward movement looked slow. The mountain ridge hid the last part of each descent. Video showed the lights disappearing at the same line, another clue linking them to terrain rather than a hovering vehicle. The earlier formation left poorer video and more disagreement. Some observers described one solid object blocking the stars. Their size estimates ran from hundreds of feet to more than a mile. Arizona Governor Fife Symington, a former Air Force pilot, later said he had seen a large object unlike any aircraft he knew. Amateur astronomer Mitch Stanley had better equipment. Stanley aimed a 10-inch Dobsonian telescope at the moving formation. Under magnification, each bright point split into a pair of lights attached to squarish wings. Stanley used about 60 times magnification and tracked the formation for close to a minute. His mother stood nearby and asked what he saw. "Planes," Mitch answered. The account appeared in local reporting, yet national programs kept returning to witnesses who saw a solid body with the naked eye. Stanley's account received less attention than the giant object stories. He had no dramatic photo, but his telescope added detail missing from every naked eye report. His observation strongly favors separate aircraft. The solid body existed in the dark space between their lights. Video analysis also found lights shifting position relative to one another. Lamps attached to one rigid body would stay fixed. Airplanes in formation move slightly as pilots hold position. High altitude explains the weak engine noise and slow-looking movement. No surviving flight record identifies the earlier planes by tail number, but the available evidence favors an aircraft formation.
Phoenix gives us the cleanest lesson of the night. Stop calling both displays the Phoenix Lights. The first moved across the state. The second stayed near one section of horizon. Aircraft fit the first. Flares fit the second. One telescope also beat hundreds of naked eyes. Stanley saw wings around the lights. His observation had more detail, even though other witnesses had louder stories.
The witnesses saw lights. Their brains supplied different objects. Star blocking sounds like proof of a solid body. The detail is less secure than the phrase suggests. 5 planes cross and cover individual stars. Thin cloud, haze, and city glow hide fainter points. Human night vision also loses detail away from the center of sight. A witness focused on the bright outline remembers a darker middle. Size depends on distance. A wide formation at 30,000 feet fills the same part of your view as a smaller object close to the ground. No radar record or known landmark fixed the range. Above the houses described an impression, not a measured altitude. Phoenix also became a shared event. People called radio stations, police departments, television newsrooms, friends, and relatives. By morning, hundreds knew others had seen lights too. Reports reinforced one another even when the time and location pointed to different events. Governor Symington first turned the event into a joke. An aide appeared at a press conference in an alien costume. Years later, Symington said the stunt was meant to calm the public. He also said he had personally seen a large, unexplained object. His reversal became another disputed piece of the story. Television replayed the flare footage for years. Documentaries added music and computer-generated bodies missing from the recordings. Reenactments turned separate lights into a solid black V. The screen version grew clearer as the original evidence stayed blurry. The witnesses deserve no ridicule. Pilots, public officials, residents, and an astronomer looked at the same sky and reached different answers. Training helped. A telescope helped more. Missing flight records stopped the first event from closing completely. 3 years later, a triangle report moved across southern Illinois before sunrise. Police radio captured the calls as officers looked for the object. Shortly after 4 a.m. on January 5, 2000, truck driver Melvin Knoll saw an unusual object near Highland, Illinois. His description changed as the viewing angle shifted. He reported a large structure with lights and rows of illuminated rectangles. Then he called police. Dispatchers passed the call across St. Clair County. An officer in Lebanon searched the sky. Another officer looked from Shiloh. In Millstadt, Officer Craig Stevens heard the radio traffic and drove toward open ground. The calls created a live chain. One department warned the next as the lights moved across the county. Officer David Martin in Shiloh described a large arrowhead with bright white lights and smaller red and green lights toward the rear. Stevens saw the object minutes later from Millstadt. An officer in Dupo then reported possible lights at greater altitude. The sequence gave investigators direction and rough timing, even without radar. Stevens wrote an official report afterward. From a parking area near Liederkranz Park, he saw a large object approaching from the south. He placed the altitude between 500 and 1,000 feet. The object moved slowly and made a low buzzing sound. Stevens grabbed a Polaroid camera from his patrol car as the lights banked northeast. Bitter cold ruined the picture. He returned to the station, drew the shape, and typed his account. The temperature sat near 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Old instant film responded badly in such cold, and the picture failed to provide useful detail. The failure sounds convenient in a retelling, but the official report mentioned the problem at the time. The surviving sketch shows how Stevens interpreted the lights. Like the Bagram illustration, the drawing records a witness description rather than an independent image. Other officers described a triangle, arrowhead, or V. Bright white lights marked the main shape, with smaller red or green lights behind. Their calls traced a rough path through several police jurisdictions. The route passed near Scott Air Force Base. No known base operation matched the full series of reports. As testimony, Illinois ranks among the stronger black triangle cases. The witnesses stood in different towns. Several worked as police officers. Dispatch calls happened during the sighting, and Stevens filed a written report soon afterward. The physical evidence is weak. Police training helps with reporting. The training does not provide range measurements in a dark sky. Estimates of altitude, speed, and size still depend on distance. The descriptions also differ. Some officers saw a triangle. Knoll's first report sounded more rectangular. Stevens heard a buzz. Others heard nothing. The photo failed, and no public radar record tied the sightings to a flight track.
Illinois gives us credible witnesses and a weak instrument panel. The officers reported during the event, so later, folklore did not invent the whole sequence. Yet every useful measurement still came from eyes looking into darkness. A radar track would settle altitude, speed, direction, and position. Public files contain no such track. The radio calls prove several officers followed a moving display. They do not prove one enormous vehicle produced every light.
Suggested sources include a blimp, a large plane, an aircraft formation, and a classified platform. A distant airplane looks slow and low when the viewer places the object too close. Wind carries engine sound away from one observer and toward another. Each idea fits part of the record. None identifies a specific flight. Scott Air Force Base pushed attention toward a secret aircraft. Real test programs operate at night. Stealth designs look strange from the ground. Still, flying a large experimental plane over populated towns would expose the program for no clear reason. Such a flight also needs a crew, maintenance, range control, and tracking. Secrecy hides records from the public. Secrecy does not remove the operation behind them. Black Project claims turn every missing piece into support. No record means classified. No clear photo means stealth. No engine noise means exotic propulsion. No admission means a cover-up. Such reasoning protects the claim from every test. Online stories gave the theory a name, TR3B. The supposed triangle used a spinning ring of plasma or mercury to reduce mass. Diagrams showed one engine at each corner and a reactor in the center. Some versions placed the program at Area 51. Others connected the vehicle to Belgium or the Gulf War. The technical detail sounds convincing. The paper trail is missing. No authenticated design, budget line, test record, wreckage, production history, or named official establishes a TR3B program. Books, videos, and websites cite one another. For now, the name belongs to folklore. Compare the rumor with the F-117. The secret jet left bases, pilots, maintenance crews, contractors, test flights, accidents, budgets, and eventually an official reveal. A real aircraft program creates thousands of human and physical traces. The TR3B story offers diagrams and repeated descriptions without the industrial history needed to build a fleet. The story borrows from real technology. Flying wings, stealth coatings, classified budgets, plasma research, and advanced drones all exist. The rumor links those facts to an unsupported aircraft. The rumor then shapes later sightings. Someone familiar with a TR3B diagram sees 3 lights and a central glow. A viewer who watched a Belgian wave documentary joins a V of lights into one body. Filmmakers borrow from witness reports, and witnesses borrow the images back. Fraud is not required. People use familiar images to explain unfamiliar sights. Silver saucers dominated one period. Black triangles fit the age of stealth aircraft and night vision war footage. Illinois added police voices on the radio. The calls made the object feel tracked, even though nobody measured range, speed, or size. Credible witnesses and incomplete data left the case open. 2 years later, a pilot reported another dark triangle at Bagram. The FBI interview came in 2024. Public release followed in 2026. Earlier triangle stories already shaped how readers understood the new file. Back at Bagram, the sky was still dark. The witness gave a short description. A dark equilateral triangle crossed from west to east. The object had no visible lights and made no sound. Stars disappeared behind the shape. The pilot estimated a width near 500 feet and a speed near 150 knots. He remembered a second pilot reacting. Bagram lacks the records found in the other cases. No local pilots demonstrated a formation. No confirmed flare operation matches the time. No public radar summary, fighter response, or dispatch recording supports the account. The short account sounds clean. The missing detail leaves almost nothing to test. The FBI interviewed the pilot in March 2024, more than 2 decades after the reported sighting. The resulting Form 302 carried the title Airborne Lights in Triangle, despite the witness describing no lights on the object. A companion illustration supplied a picture. The Pentagon released both records in August 2026. CBS News reported 41 files in the full batch. Other files covered military reports and videos. An AC-130 crew over the Gulf of Oman observed several objects appearing cold in infrared imagery. Additional records collected incidents previously scattered among military units and government agencies. Release made the reports public. No blanket conclusion explained every case. An infrared image measures heat differences, not ordinary color. A cold-looking target might reflect the atmosphere, sensor settings, viewing angle, or a source with a lower apparent temperature than the background. Without raw data and full metadata, a video clip tells only part of the story. The same caution applies to an artist's rendering based on memory. Government paperwork looks authoritative. An agency seal, tracking number, or unclassified marking makes a claim feel verified. Government offices also record uncertainty every day. Police take statements before confirming an event. Intelligence agencies collect rumors worth checking. Aviation authorities record hazards before finding the source. An official file verifies the report's existence. The file does not verify every claim inside.
Keep the agency in the right seat. The FBI did not watch a triangle cross Bagram. An agent interviewed a pilot who remembered one. Moving the FBI from recorder to witness adds authority the file never earned. The accurate sentence sounds less dramatic. Use the sentence anyway. The document preserves a claim. The document does not verify the machine.
The account passed through several hands. The pilot remembered an event from 2002. An agent summarized his words in 2024. An artist drew the description. Officials reviewed the documents for release. Journalists selected the strongest details in 2026. Each step changed how the public received the story. A 22-year-old memory still holds value. Pilots remember unusual flights for decades. Confidence does not guarantee accurate measurements, though. Size and speed estimates drift even when the central memory stays sharp. Later exposure to triangle stories also changes the language used for an old sighting. The file never says what the pilot knew about Hudson Valley, Belgium, Phoenix, Illinois, the B-2 or TR-3B rumors before his interview. The second pilot holds the most important missing piece. The release summary gives only the first pilot's memory of a reaction. A separate statement made near the time would strengthen the account. So would a duty log, radar record, air traffic tape, weather archive, flight schedule, sensor image, or diary. None appears in the released file. Size, altitude, and speed remain guesses built on unknown distance. Bagram hosted coalition aircraft, helicopters, surveillance platforms, and classified activity in 2002. The busy airspace provides many ordinary and secret candidates. An unknown object would also raise a serious flight safety or security concern. A 500-foot vehicle crossing the field should leave more than one memory. We have no supporting operational record in the public file. Classified material adds a frustrating limit. Agencies often protect imagery because the picture reveals sensor range, resolution, or location. The subject in the image might be ordinary. Releasing the full file would still expose a military capability. Missing data therefore supports caution, not a claim about whatever crossed the sky. The B-2 belongs on the candidate list. The bomber was operational and had flown combat missions linked to Afghanistan after the September 11th attacks. Its dark flying wing blocks stars and disappears against the night sky. The shape is not equilateral. The wingspan measures 172 feet, far below the witness estimate. 4 turbofan engines also make noise. A greater distance would make the bomber look larger, slower, and quieter from the witness's position. An aircraft formation offers another source, though the witness reported no corner lights. Thin cloud erases stars. A dark plane crossing the Milky Way creates a moving patch of missing light. The observer might have seen a real aircraft and given the darkness a sharper outline than the view supported. Another source outside these suggestions stays possible. Unidentified protects the open answer until better evidence arrives. Joining Hudson Valley, Belgium, Phoenix, Illinois, and Afghanistan into one secret fleet makes a good story. Similar descriptions do not prove one source. Different lights and aircraft produce the same triangle report under similar viewing conditions. The Bagram file gives us one witness, one location, one date, and one reported shape. The rest needs evidence. Every black triangle case begins with a sighting. The strength of the case depends on what survives after the witness looks away. At the first level, one person remembers lights or missing stars. The account deserves a record. On its own, the memory gives no reliable range, altitude, speed, or size. The next level adds independent witnesses. Their statements work best when each person writes before discussing the event. Matching details then carry weight. Shared errors also become easier to spot. If every witness heard one another on the radio first, agreement means less. Photographs and videos sit higher only when investigators keep the original files. A social media copy often strips timing, camera settings, location data, and resolution. A dark frame with 3 lights proves 3 lights reached a sensor. Without scale or distance, the picture does not prove one solid triangle joined them. Radar adds range and motion. Infrared adds heat information. Flight logs identify known traffic. Weather records explain cloud, wind, haze, and temperature layers. When those sources share accurate time and position, one case begins to take shape. No report in tonight's story reaches the top of this ladder. The weakness starts with human vision. Daylight supplies texture, shadow, haze, a visible horizon, and familiar objects on the ground. Night removes most of those clues. One bright point might be close and small, or distant and large. Slow movement across your view might belong to a nearby object, or a jet moving hundreds of miles an hour far away. The autokinetic effect makes a fixed light seem to move during a long stare into darkness. Small eye movements occur without a stable reference. The brain assigns motion to the light. Pilots learn to shift their gaze and check instruments. A driver beside a road has fewer tools. Several lights create another error. The brain groups points moving together. 3 form a triangle. 5 form a V. The dark area between them becomes a surface. If faint stars disappear inside the outline, the surface feels confirmed. Thin cloud, glare, separate aircraft, or the limits of night vision might explain the missing points. Trees and rooftops seem to provide scale, though they usually sit far closer than the lights. A witness reports an object above the trees. The phrase gives direction. The phrase gives no distance. Sound arrives late and moves with wind and terrain. A distant aircraft crosses the field of view before its engine noise reaches the observer. Traffic, machinery, and conversation cover weaker frequencies. Silence then becomes one of the sharpest details in memory, even when no instrument measured the sound. Confidence does not repair those limits. NASA's independent UAP study reached a similar point in 2023. Researchers lacked enough high-quality observations for firm scientific conclusions. Their report called for calibrated sensors, several forms of measurement, exact timing, position, weather, and complete metadata. Recent Pentagon reports list balloons, birds, drones, satellites, and aircraft among resolved cases. Many reports stay open because investigators receive too little information. One annual review covered 757 submissions. Hundreds moved toward ordinary explanations. 444 entered an archive because the files lacked enough data. 21 received deeper review for unusual reported behavior. The office reported no extraterrestrial technology or breakthrough foreign aircraft among the resolved cases. An unresolved label often describes the file, not the object.
Here is my evidence ladder. A story gets my attention. Separate witnesses earn more. Original images help. Radar with full data helps much more. Put all of them on the same clock and I start leaning forward. None of our triangle cases gets there. Some fail near the bottom. A few climb halfway. Calling every open file a hidden aircraft turns missing evidence into a sales pitch.
The Hudson Valley sits closest to a solved wave. Known pilots flew light aircraft from Stormville in V's, crescents, and other shapes. A police officer followed the lights toward the airport. Federal inspectors arrived. The flight slowed, and the reports fell with them. A few isolated calls lack enough detail, but the wider pattern points toward formation flying and public attention. Belgium carries a stronger official record. Police gave statements. Radar operators tracked returns. Fighters launched. The extra evidence never joined around one confirmed vehicle. Later reconstruction weakened the most dramatic radar claims. The famous photograph came from a suspended model. Phoenix contains 2 events under one name. Military flares explain the later lights near the Sierra Estrella. The earlier V moved across Arizona. Witnesses on the ground saw one dark body. Mitch Stanley looked through a telescope and saw separate aircraft. His 1 minute of magnified observation gave more useful detail than hundreds of naked eye estimates. Illinois offers the strongest live witness chain in this episode. Dispatch calls moved from town to town as officers searched the sky. Craig Stevens filed the report and drew the shape soon afterward. The failed photograph and missing radar record leave the source unidentified. The calls prove an event unfolded. They do not measure the object behind the lights. Bagram carries the weakest contemporary record and the strongest new headline. The reported event took place in 2002. The FBI interview arrived in 2024. Public release followed in 2026. By then, routine operational records had become hard to locate, classified, or lost. The cases share a shape. Their evidence points in different directions. Aviation supplied real flying wings and secret programs. The F-117 flew for years before public acknowledgement. The B-2 placed a huge black wing into news footage. Those programs make suspicion of hidden aircraft reasonable. They do not supply proof for TR-3B stories or a single triangle fleet crossing several decades. Media supplied a stable picture. Kenneth Arnold's description became the flying saucer through a phrase in the press. The Belgian model gave black triangles a famous photograph. Phoenix Video gave television an enduring row of lights. Reenactments filled the dark space with a solid body. Websites later added engine diagrams and program names without a verifiable industrial history. Perception supplied scale. Formations became one object. Flares hovered above an unseen ridge. Missing stars became a surface. Weak engine noise became silence. Memory gave rough impressions, cleaner edges. Government files supplied authority. Project Blue Book collected more than 12,000 reports and closed with 701 unresolved. The Air Force found no evidence of extraterrestrial vehicles or science beyond known limits. New offices inherited the same basic problem decades later. Reports arrive faster than good data.
Unexplained marks the end of the evidence. The word does not mean alien. The word does not mean secret aircraft. The word also does not mean foolish witness. For the next report, save the original recording. Write down the exact time and direction. Keep witnesses apart until their accounts are finished. Get radar, weather, flight traffic, and camera settings. Arguments grow from gaps. Answers grow from measurements.
Return to Bagram before dawn. One pilot watches a dark triangle move across the stars. Another pilot reacts nearby. Then the shape leaves the visible sky. The first pilot's memory survives. An FBI summary preserves the later interview. An illustration gives the memory an edge. A government release gives the story a date, a file number, and a headline. The second pilot's own words never appear. His account would matter more than another artist's rendering. A duty log would matter more than another television reconstruction. Radar or flight records would matter more than a new name for the object. Until one of those records appears, the Bagram Triangle stays where the evidence left the case. A pilot saw a dark shape. The public file does not identify the source.